Welcome to Tenders Talk, our video game podcast. I'm Adam Henderson, and today I'm joined by David Henderson, my brother. How you doing, David?
Hey guys, doing good.
Cool. Today we have a very special episode about a game that we are both very passionate about. David actually introduced it to me years and years ago, so I felt it...
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. So I felt it appropriate to have him on this week. And that game is Chrono Trigger. But before we get into it, David, give us a little introduction. Tell us about yourself. Why should people care what you have to say about video games?
Because I've been playing video games for a long time. What else needs to be said? No, I started playing video games, of course, like most people when they were younger. I'm from that video game generation, so I've played since the old NES days on up. I grew up with a guy who now has a gaming podcast, so I feel like that should qualify me for something. I'm Adam's brother, by the way, just in case no one knew that. So this is like Tinder's Bros gaming talk now. Whatever. But I studied English and education in college. Yeah, I'm currently a teacher, so
Yeah, so
that's it.
his contributions into the story elements of Chrono Trigger are going to be much appreciated. It's not my strong suit, so I'm glad to have him.
Well, that's yet to be seen, but that's the hope.
It'll be good. It'll be good. All right. So just before we jump into our experiences with the game and our opinions and whatnot, let's just throw some information at you, just so if you're not familiar with Chrono Trigger and its history, you can be familiar and be
Yeah,
interested.
and I imagine most of the people that are listening have played the game. So
Probably.
there are going to be massive spoilers and stuff, but the information that you're about to present is stuff that I didn't know about the game. So I think even if you've played the game, I think this will be interesting to you.
Definitely. All right. So it was developed. So Chrono Trigger was developed by SquareSoft. So this was before Square and Enix became one company. So SquareSoft, which is Final Fantasy makers, and it was designed by what they called the Dream Team at the time, which is Hironobu Sakaguchi, creator of Final Fantasy, Yuji Horii, a freelancer, game designer, and creator of Dragon Quest, and Akira Toriyama, who is famed for his manga art stuff with Dragon Ball, like Dragon Ball Z and whatnot. And the music was composed by Yasunori Mitsuda and Nobuo Uematsu. That's right.
Cakes. I don't recognize any of those guys from the 1992 U.S. basketball team. I'm confused.
What? What?
The Dream Team.
The Dream Team. Okay, got it. That reference will be missed on many.
No,
Uh,
no. For the two people that got that, you're welcome.
That was funny though. I appreciate it. Yeah, so that team was a big deal that got put together. Again, so before Square Enix put together, so having the creator of Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest working on the same game was huge, and the art style is beautiful, as you can see in Chrono Trigger. And the
And
music,
I didn't know that Akira Toriyama did that, the Dragon Ball Z author and artist. And so now that I know that, looking at the game and thinking about the art in the game, it totally makes sense that it would be the Dragon Ball Z artist, like the main character Chrono and the way he looks and his hair. He's basically a redheaded Saiyan, which is awesome.
for sure, definitely. And just a couple more things. It was originally released in March of 1995 on the SNES, and since has been re-released on a ton of different places. So on the PlayStation with added anime cutscenes, on the Nintendo DS with some extra content, including an optional boss, a new ending, and a weird little beast training mode that I didn't think added a whole lot to the game, but maybe we'll talk about that later. There's also
Beast training?
yeah, like the little blue dudes. I think they're called like news or whatever. Like the little
Oh,
blue
yeah,
dudes
yeah,
with like
yeah.
green hair. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
you can like train them and then like fight stuff. I never got totally into it, but it's there if you're
All right.
interested. It was also
Neato.
it was also re-released on the Wii Virtual Console, PlayStation Network. It's now on mobile and most recently on Steam with the same DS enhancements. So it's kind of why I want to talk about it today because I saw that was re-released like a couple weeks ago actually on Steam with like no real fanfare, which is sad. But I heard it's actually a pretty weak release. So just get this out of the way now. The DS version is like the way to go. If you have a 3DS or a Nintendo DS, do yourself a favor, go pick up a $20 used copy of this game and play it.
They did like redid some of the translations. So like the translations from the Japanese to the English are better in the DS version, right?
Oh yeah, way better. So you know how in the SNES version Frog is like talking with like a ye olden times
Well, an
accent and stuff.
attempted ye olden time. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's all fixed, and the dialogue is actually really clean. So I was playing it just recently to get caught up, and it's actually really good. It's good translation.
nice.
And also, Chrono Trigger has a couple of sequels. So the first being Radical Dreamers, which was released on the on the Satellaview. It's a BS game, which is an add-on to the SNES. Well, not SNES, for the Super Famicom. So it was only in Japan, and it was like satellite broadcast of games that you could like download to empty carts that Nintendo would sell. Again, only in Japan. And one of these was Radical Dreamers, which was then adapted into Chrono Cross, which is a full-blown PlayStation game, which lost a lot of the magic that Chrono Trigger had, but it's still in the same world and has some of the same lore. And if you're into that, there you go.
Yeah, and I've also tried to get through Chrono Cross, but it's like you said, it's a little bit of a step down uh, from Chrono Trigger. But anyway, we can talk about that later.
Yeah. All right. So our experiences with the game. David, what are your first experiences with Chrono Trigger?
Well, this was one of the first RPGs that I played ever, and so I feel bad kind of saying this, but it kind of ruined other RPGs for me, right? Because it was so good, and I was so into it, and it did look so much better than other Super Nintendo games. I mean, just from the beginning. I recently started a new game on it just to kind of bring back those memories and those feels again. And when it opened up, and for those of you that played the game, the opening scene is just so peaceful. There's like a bell ringing in the background. There's like it's colorful, and you see like this town, and it just feels like the start of the hero's journey for a hero. It's like the way it's supposed to be. It's peaceful. He's at home. He's got his mom there. Everything's just chill. And I remember opening that up the first time I played it and just being like, wow, I feel like it really sucks you in that way by making it feel like it's just another day. But you also know something special is going on because of balloons going off and like firework sounds and stuff. So you're like, okay, so something special is going on. But you just feel like there's just all this normalcy. Everything just feels normal. And for some reason, that just sucks you in, especially in this game.
Something I also really appreciate about the opening cutscene is that yeah, there's like all the feeling and everything. I love that making lean square or lean A, lean whatever, kind of like the focal point
Mhm.
shows you that duh, you're supposed to go here. So this is
Right.
the party or the festival that your mom tells you about. So that's just really smart. Chrono Trigger does a lot of stuff like that in terms of tutorials that or like telling you where to go, through story or gameplay, rather than being like, oh, we need to go here now. Like, this is where you're supposed to go with like indicators
Yeah.
that you would see in like newer games and stuff. So I
Right.
really,
It doesn't hold your hand. And I think older games were frustrating for me a lot. And I got frustrated with older RPGs when I tried to go back and when I fell in love with Chrono Trigger, I'd go back and try to play similar games, but I would wander around a forest for a while not knowing what to do or something, right? But Chrono Trigger does a good job of finding that balance between there's no like objective cursor on your map and there's no like directional arrow telling you where to go like with a lot of new games like you said, but it leads you almost by the hand in a way that isn't like patronizing, but it's like okay, no, I know what to do, and it feels so organic, it feels so smooth.
hmm yeah, everything about Chrono Trigger feels really smooth. Not just like where you're supposed to go and stuff, but even just like the way you move. I mean,
Totally.
up until Chrono Trigger, I can't remember an RPG that had like diagonal movement.
Right, right. And I was playing an RPG, a JRPG on PlayStation a little bit ago, and it felt like I was moving on a chessboard, up, down, left, right. And I was like, man, Super Nintendo got it right with Chrono Trigger being able to it felt so smooth.
Yeah, similarly, I got the SNES Classic recently, and I started playing Final Fantasy VI, and it did come out a year before Chrono Trigger, but still, just it feels so primitive and blocky compared to now playing Chrono Trigger again. And then there's just other things that feel smooth. You can walk away from conversations, which they are continued in other later Final Fantasy games.
Love that.
There's no cut for battles, so like you don't like have random battle sequence. The screen like does a weird twisty graphic thing, black face.
I call it the battle swirly.
The battle, yeah, you get the battle swirly going, and fades to black, and like, no, 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 no,
Battle
and
music.
battle music starts going. You're like, okay, we're gonna fight now. But instead, it's just you bump into an enemy, you see them around. Sometimes they surprise you or ambush you, but it's just on the world map. So the sprites never change. I really appreciate it. It's always the same sprites, and then the battle animations are just really cool, and the menu navigation. while it's still an RPG, there's still tons of menus in battle to navigate through, but for some reason it just feels smoother, especially in this remake, that than previous RPGs that I've played.
Yeah, I think that's all organization, right? Like the information that you want to see is up right away when you hit the menu. Then what you use the most, right? So you use your items next, right? So it's to just one click over, and then
Hmm.
it's just one move over for the other stuff. I just feel like it was really smartly done the way they put everything together, and all the information. As soon as you pause, you see how much money you have, you see all the characters and their equipment right away. So it's really quick, where other games would have like 3 or 4 options to select before you get to selecting equipment for your team or something. It was just all right there. It was easy to see, and it was just like you said. It's all so smooth, and I love the way they do the battles where you just bump into someone and there you are, you're fighting, because when I'm fighting just to fight and get money or get experience or get new techs, which is awesome, you it doesn't feel like a tedious experience because there's not a 10-second pause between each battle. It's
Hmm.
just you bump into somebody, the battle starts, and you're going. And I love that. And I also love if you don't mind me moving on to something else, when it comes to the smooth gameplay, is the active time battling, like
Hmm.
active versus wait. I love the active battle because it adds another element of strategy. Because there are sometimes where enemies will have like a shield or something, and then they'll move the shield. And if you just wait on your turn, like time keeps going, and you can then attack the guys when they move the shield and
Hmm.
stuff like that. And I thought that was so cool that in 1995 a game was doing that. And if you were playing hardcore and you wanted to do the active gameplay, it opened up more strategy options for you in battles. I love that.
It also makes it like way more tense. Are you kidding me? Like
Yes.
you're in a like final battle or something, and you're about to die, and you're like your meter's ticking up, and you're just like
Yeah.
slamming the raise, like the resurrection button, and you're just like
Yes.
trying to raise them, and then you die or something, and it's just sad.
Oh
But
yeah.
or you get
And,
it, and you're
and
like yes,
right, and
but
it adds an element of difficulty to it. Because I feel like a lot of times with JRPGs, especially when you're good at playing them, it gets to the point where you're just pushing buttons and it's not really. So battles become like a chore
hmm
and it doesn't feel active. But then like other RPGs, like I love Super Mario RPG for example, because the timed hits. So you're actively doing something the entire battle. You're either blocking or you're pushing buttons in sequence or pushing buttons quickly, and so you're an active participant in the battle. And I feel that way with Chrono Trigger's battle system. You're constantly part of the action. You're not just sitting there pressing a button.
yeah, it rewards you for getting good,
Yes,
as they
yes,
say. Um, okay, some other gameplay stuff. We already kind of mentioned the tutorials and how they're smart, but even just in the first, so I started the game up again, just on a new game plus, just kind of blowing through stuff. And oh yeah, I wanted to mention you can like avoid the battles really easily. It's like really cool. Like I
I
turned,
do appreciate that too. Yeah.
yeah, I turned like the first like dungeon type thing in kind of like a stealth mission where I just kind of like it's like dodging around everyone because I'm like I didn't want to fight them because I'm new game plus. My guys are like like 40 something. I didn't want to worry
Yeah.
about it.
And
So that
I
was really
love how
cool.
you can sneak up on certain guys and clonk them in the back of the head with your sword, and you don't enter a battle. You drop them, and then you
Hmm.
get an item from them when you do that. I
Yeah,
thought that was so cool, and I don't know of any older games like this that had like a battle system JRPG where you could do something like that, and it was done that smoothly. It was cool.
Chrono Trigger is just really smart in a lot of ways that now we see it like are common, but they're pioneering the way for a lot of JRPGs now. Um, oh yeah, something I wanted to talk about that I thought was really interesting that I noticed. So there comes a point, slight early game spoiler. Comes a point where one of your characters, Marley, like disappears, and you have to go save her and whatnot. So like you find her in the past, she like literally like poofs into sparks and
Yeah,
disappears.
yeah,
Like
yeah. Yeah, she breaks into pieces and goes away. Yeah.
yeah, and you find out it's because the queen of that time, and you find out she's like royalty and whatever. So the queen of that time dies to some tragic kidnapping or whatever. So her line is ended. Therefore, Marley is never born. But
Right.
and you think like to me, I'm like okay, like that just makes sense, and I don't need that explained to me. But then Luca, another character, one of Chrono's good lifetime friends or whatever, shows up and goes into this cutscene where it like really explains it to you really like thoroughly. And I was playing, I was like, I don't need this. This is really frustrating. But then I realized if I was playing this for the first time, where I never understood the concept of the effects on the past and the future with time travel and everything, it's really thoughtful and it's a smart thing to put in that
No,
they
absolutely.
they honestly didn't need to, but they did, and it helped.
Right, and it was even they did it visually, right? And I think I appreciated that too. And like you said, I feel like if you're playing the game for the first time, and time travel can always be messy and complex and complicated, but they handle time travel so well in this game, and that's one of the ways they did it. Like that's your introduction to time travel and the effect that it may have.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And they did do that really well.
And let's be honest, time travel is freaking dope.
Yes, sir.
It is so cool, and it's handled really well. Play,
Absolutely.
yeah, player choice plays a huge part in this game before I feel like any other game was doing it really well. Like even in the opening instances, you don't know it, but you are being judged on everything you are doing in the first
Isn't
like
that cool?
5 to 15 minutes of the game. You are being judged harshly by your actions, and it is, and you don't find this out until maybe like really 2 hours later or an hour and a half later, depending on, or even an hour later, depending on how quick you're playing.
But definitely long enough to forget about it.
Uh-huh. And then it happens, and you're like, what? Because
Yes.
I ate that old man's lunch, and I going to jail? What?
No, it's funny when I recently started a new game when we talked about doing this pod on Chrono Trigger, I accidentally ate his lunch. I was like, I remember something about this lunch here, and I pushed A on it, and
You just
it
eat the
disappeared.
lunch.
And I was like, oh no, I stole the old man's lunch. So
And then
he's gonna,
and then you can even talk to the old man. He's just like, I'm so excited to eat my lunch, and you're just like,
yeah.
oh, I ate it.
But that's so cool and I feel like just uh, if you're listening, spoiler alert for the entire pod. Okay, we're gonna spoil everything in this game in the entire pod, so just
Yeah.
be aware of that. So you eat the dude's lunch, whatever, and you do these other things like the cat thing, and whether or not you want to sell Marley's pendant away and stuff. Like so, all these things affect what happens in the game later on when you come back to that time, right? And I think that's so cool that they bring that stuff back, and it also sets a precedent in the game where you
Your actions
realize
matter.
exactly, and it's not just going to affect things now currently that happen right away, but it's going to affect things later on in the game. Like you go back to 600 AD, you go back in time after you do all this stuff, and then you go on this adventure and you save Queen Lean, the ancestor of Marley, right? So you can save Marley and everything. So you save her, everything's great, everything's fine, feels like an end of a chapter. You come back, and now you're in trouble again because you abducted the princess, right?
Hmm.
And it's so cool that they're bringing all the stuff back from before. It was done so well, and it didn't feel it when you first played it. It surprises you. You're like, I can't believe this is going on, and this was happening in 1995, which I think is pretty amazing.
It's mind blowing. And shout outs to the mother bleeping time traveling airship,
Right?
As David likes to call it.
Oh my
He
gosh,
literally typed it down as the mother bleeping time traveling airship, which
that's
is
exactly what it is.
pretty cool that you get later in the game. So, anyways, all right. So now, like we've said, spoiler warnings, but now it's like we've talked about gameplay. We want to talk about story and our favorite parts of the story. So like super really heavy spoiler warning here. If you haven't played the
Right?
game, skip the next like 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Do yourself a favor, go play the game.
Just
So
stop now and go play it, right?
yeah, stop now, go play it, then come back and listen again. It'll be great. All right, David, what name one of your favorite story moments in Chrono
Wait,
Trigger? Or
can I
let's
can
go.
I actually take it back a little bit?
Oh sure, whatever you want to
Okay,
do.
so I studied a lot of literature in I said that weird literature. I studied a lot of literature. I studied a lot of literature in college because I was going to be an English teacher, right? And so story elements always pop out to me because I've been trained to recognize them and things like that. Chrono Trigger follows a really cool pattern when it comes to a story. So the story is the hero's journey, and the hero's journey is something that's happened since the beginning of time. It's Hercules, from Hercules to Luke Skywalker to Frodo Baggins to it. Most heroes follow this kind of pattern, and they do it so well in Chrono Trigger. And I think one of the reasons why the story sucks you in so much is because Chrono is the main character, but he's a silent protagonist, which a lot of RPGs try to do and maybe don't do so well. But Chrono's a silent protagonist, and you kind of insert yourself into that role, right? So you're kind of going on the hero's journey as the player. So you're interacting with the world and the environment as if you're Chrono, and because he's a silent protagonist, it adds to that feeling. And so then you go on this hero's journey where you start off in the normal world, everything's normal, everything's fine, you're just an average person, but then something happens to kind of thrust you into this new world or this new thing, right? For Luke Skywalker, it was being introduced to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and there's this world of the Force, and he leaves his home planet. So there's that. Frodo Baggins is introduced to the Ring, and he's forced to leave the Shire
Hmm.
and go into the wide world. He's introduced into a new world, and
And
that
so for Chrono, it's Marley being sent to the past and having to go rescue her.
exactly. So he's in his normal world, everything's good. He's thrust into that new or special world when he has to go back in time, and all of a sudden time travel opens up, and that's the new world. Okay, and then when that happens, you generally meet someone that kind of helps guide you along the process. For him, it's kind of Luca, and then it's Marley, and then it's Robo. It's all these different characters from the different timelines become like your Obi-Wan Kenobi, become your Gandalf, become your Dumbledore that kind of guide you through this new special world with these new special abilities and things like that. And so by following this pattern and doing it so well, it really sucks you in and makes you feel like a part of the story. Because what happens is you get to a point in every chapter of the story, you go down to a belly of the beast situation where you most of in video games we call them like the dungeon situations, and then the boss battle, right? You face the toughest thing, but then you come out of it, and you come out of the dungeon, you come out of the castle, you come out of the scary thing, whatever, the big boss fight, stronger and better and able to move on and do something more. And you see this pattern in a lot of video games, but Chrono Trigger does it so well. It's almost like a suspense writer, how at the end of every chapter, there's a really good resolution of something. Something gets solved, and so you have a feeling of contentment, like, okay, there's a resolution here. But then it also introduces something new, some new tension, some new problem. And Chrono Trigger does that so well. And I was thinking about that as going through the gameplay this first time. You start off, you get sucked in, you have to go save Queen Lane, you come back, oh no, now you're being taken to jail because Marley's been stolen. Okay, well, you escape from that, and then what happens? You go right back into the future, right? You find a time gate, and you go into the future to escape being captured, and it just leads you from one thing to the other, but you never feel unsatisfied with the conclusion from the previous chapter. So the story overall in Chrono Trigger is done so well, and I think a lot of players don't recognize why the story feels so organic and so smooth and so clean and so like satisfying. Well, it's because there's always that resolution before the new tension's introduced, and then it just keeps building on itself and building on itself, and it's done so well. I can't praise the story enough in Chrono Trigger for that and the way it was done in the game.
Can you think of any other games from that like era that did a story that well?
Oh man,
Some other
that's so
examples, maybe?
tough. That's so tough.
Like
Because when I
some classic examples of stories that are really good are like Final Fantasy VI. Everyone's like that, really praises that one. Honestly, off the top of my head, that's all I can think of from that time of gaming.
right, and that's because it's so hard to do, and it makes sense that this dream team that isn't the '92 U.S. men's basketball team that you mentioned before, these guys, it makes sense that they would do it so well because they practiced it, and I really feel like they based it off of those ancient patterns of storytelling, and that's why it works so well. But I feel like other games had a hard time making the stories work as well as this one did. So I can't think of any examples off the top of my head.
All right, I was just curious because that's actually really interesting because the story in Chrono Trigger does just feel good
Yeah,
for from an uneducated, not uneducated, but uneducated in that field of study. It's just fun and feels good. So that's a cool explanation behind that.
right. And another element of story. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of in my bag right now. So
David's
uh,
English nerding out.
I am, and I don't care. So the characters in the game, you connect to all of them. So every character that ends up being on your team, and from Luca to you grow up in your friends, and so you have that friendship. And then Marley, you go on this little adventure together, and you form a bond. Then Glenn, the frog, um, he comes in and saves you, and you learn his backstory. And then Robo, you go on a little adventure with him, and you learn Magus's backstory. And then you go on this adventure with Ayala. So all of these characters that end up being on your team, you share some experience or story with them. So there's a connection to every single character, which is really hard to do. I know, like in Final Fantasy VII, for example, I feel like you just dumped a bunch of people on me that I don't care about. And
Yeah.
then I picked two or three of my favorites and off we go. But it was just like a character dump on you, and then like, okay, just these are cool character designs that we thought of, and so we have to put them in the game. But in Chrono Trigger, you don't get that feeling. You connect to every single character, and that's because the story and because you go on adventures with all of them, and you get to know about their past.
hmm And that becomes like a main focus in the game in a lot of instances, especially the side quests. And I think part of the reason that the story works so well in Chrono Trigger is because it honestly, if you go through and play Chrono Trigger, not like super fast, but you're not grinding a whole lot, you're just playing through the game. BT dubs, you don't have to grind like at all in Chrono Trigger. Very natural progression, very well done.
Yeah. Oh, so again,
Um,
smooth.
it's very smooth. But anyways, I feel like the story is condensed, not to like it doesn't lose anything, but it's not there's no fluff. You don't forget what happened. Like sometimes I feel like I'd play like Final Fantasy 7 is a good example. You'll play Final Fantasy 7 and there's so much time between major story events that you're just
Yes.
kind of like, what happened last?
Yeah, where do I have to go now? There's a tank somewhere I have to get into it and go across a river that I couldn't go over before because we can't swim, I guess.
Yeah, so it's that I feel like that plays a role in why the story in Chrono Trigger is so natural feeling because the progression is like super tight and quick. You're
Yeah.
never I don't know, there's rarely dead time in Chrono Trigger, and I love that.
Yeah.
And so to your point, so like the connection with characters and with certain areas and story events is really enhanced by the music in the game.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it is number one, it's a beautiful score. Like it's just amazing. Mitsuda and Yumatsu did a great job. But on top of that, the placement of each song in the story is it always has meaning. It's not just a cool song for the sake of being a cool song. And it's like easy example, battle song. You hear the battle song, like there's even instances in the game where the battle music is played when you're not going into a battle.
Right. It's just
And,
it, but it adds to that excitement.
but you know that it's like, oh wait, so like Crash about to go down. It even uses like a fake out, which is kind of cool. But on top of that, every character has their own theme.
Right.
So like Robo has like Chrono has his theme, Marley has his theme, Luca has her theme, or Marley's a her theme, and stuff like and you
Easy
hear
mistake there.
yeah, and you hear it when you hear it, you know that character's the focal point, and that draws a connection to them that you wouldn't have otherwise through just story. Music is
Right.
very powerful and evokes emotion in ways that just words can't.
Right. And what I've realized in this most recent playthrough is the game uses silence too.
Hmm.
So it's really smart with this music in that the music already is really, really good. And if you played the game before, I mean, you could hum or whistle the tune to just about any of these themes that we're talking about right now, probably, especially if you really like the game and have played it more than once. You just know what Frog's theme sounds like. You know what 600 AD sounds like. You just know the sound. But there are times when things start happening in the story and the music's cut off and you're just reading these intense pieces of dialogue and story and you're like whoa, and it draws you in really hard. Again, it really, a lot of films do this well, and Chrono Trigger does that really well. The music's good, but also the use of music is on point.
Hmm. Yeah, silence is powerful. Very, it really is. It can make a situation feel palpable. Like it makes it even more intense in a lot of situations.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so I think an interesting example of that in the game is when Chrono does go to jail.
Yeah.
And when you're escaping, it's silent except for like you hear like water drops and stuff like that
Yeah, and
kind of
you hear
stuff.
hear wind when you go outside.
So and it adds to the feeling of like sneakiness. Like you're trying to be sneaky, and that gives a hint to the player too that like don't get caught. Like you
Yeah,
know.
like being sneaky will reward you. And
Hmm.
again, like you said before, it feels organic in the instructions. It's not saying, "Hey, don't get caught and you'll get a reward." It's more like, "Hey, sneak around." Like the ambience of the game kind of tells you what you should be doing at the time. And that's so rad.
Hmm. All right. So now I think it would be cool if we just went to maybe each talked about two or three of our favorite moments in Chrono Trigger and why it's one of our favorite moments in Chrono Trigger.
Okay, I'm gonna go first.
Okay.
I love the whole Kingdom of Zeal, and that's the floating magic kingdom
The
that's in the distant past, right?
12,000 BC, yeah.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting thing that you have this kingdom that is thriving, that is basically a utopia. Well, it's close to there's I don't think there's obviously no real utopia there, but it sets itself, it thinks itself a utopia, and then down below there's these ground dwellers that have almost nothing. It's almost like the civilization is disappearing and dying off on the ground level of the earth, but then up in this heavenly utopia of Zeal, everything's happy. There's advanced technology. There's magic going on, and I thought that was such a cool tie-in. So I think first seeing that and how it all ties into like, okay, this is where magic came from, and all this stuff, and then you find out a lot more about the character Magus, and you get him on your team eventually. That whole Kingdom of Zeal. Oh, and okay, when Chrono sacrifices himself in Zeal, that to me,
Mind blown.
yeah, yeah. For those of you who couldn't see, Adam was doing the hand motion for mind being blown while
For
he made
those of
that
you who couldn't
sound.
see.
It really added to it. Yeah, the visual joke in the podcast didn't wasn't great, but for me it was wonderful because I can see him. But yeah, yeah. So when he sacrifices
Sorry.
himself, when he sacrifices himself, and you're like, oh my gosh, we're alive now because of Chrono, but now he's gone, and then that sacrifice that he does becomes one of his special moves, becomes one of his techs later in the game. That was,
Yeah,
to me, that's one of my favorite parts of the game.
yeah, it looks just like Luminaire. Super cool. He's all like floaty, and then he gets obliterated, and you're like, the feels.
Oh,
The first time I played it, I was like, what the freak? Chrono's dead. He's my
yeah, the
favorite.
main character died. Is the game over? The main character died.
It's like, did I
But
do something
yeah,
wrong? Like, and it makes you think, did I do something wrong? Where my choice is
yes,
incorrect that made him die? And no, there's nothing you can do about it. But then you can bring him back if you want. You don't have to, which I think is really cool.
right. Player choice. This game did player choice really well.
hmm Well, yeah, that's a really powerful moment in the game. I think the first thing I think of when story and music really mix and become a really powerful moment for me in the game is when a couple hours into the adventure, Chrono and friends go to the very far future, so 2300 AD, and everything is desolate. It's a wasteland. There's a few humans left, but they're all starving and dying because there's like no food and whatnot. And
Yeah, it,
you're,
it
you're
looks like a post-apocalyptic dystopia is what it looks like.
yeah, and you're just kind of like, what's going on? So after a while, you kind of find out. You get to a computer, and Luca's like, oh, I work on robots in 1000 AD. I bet I can understand this computer. And she does some tappy tap tapping, and the computer turns on. She's like, I'm magic. I did it. But
We're gonna skip that. That's one of those things we could talk about, like what?
I
But
don't know.
whatever.
Whatever. It was still cool. She turns on the computer. She presses a few buttons, and the video starts playing of what happened. You find out that this crazy meteor thing had implanted itself in the Earth,
A
named
giant intergalactic parasite.
named Lavos, and shoots off some super death needle rays. Actually, that attack, yeah, that attack is actually in game in the boss fight. It's called, it says like death rains from heaven or something like that when it
Yeah.
does it, and you're just like all your characters just take massive damage. But anyway, so he's just rains death from heaven everywhere, and everyone's dying and stuff, and Marley's like in tears, like, oh no, what are we gonna do? And Luca's like, holy crap, did this happen? And Chrono's just like, we can only imagine what he says because
Right.
silent protagonist, but Chrono's gotta just be like, I can fix it.
So you're saying, so okay, just so I'm clear on what you're saying, Lavos is Wreck-It Ralph, and Chrono is Fix-It Felix.
Got me.
That is perfect.
And
I have
also,
nothing to. That's perfect.
in all seriousness, Chrono's probably just like, well, let's change it. Like, we're awesome. Let's do this.
Right.
We can do this. And
Yes, and,
then
and they have to do something about it because who else is traveling back and forth through time? Like they're the only ones. So again, the hero is kind of reluctantly, or not reluctantly, but is forced into acting. It's not
uh,
like he's been trained for this his entire life, but he realizes at that moment, what else are we gonna do? And a lot of heroes get that way. Like Luke Skywalker, all of a sudden he has to be the one to save the princess because, well, here they are.
because he's there. He's the one. He's the one who can.
Right.
And Chrono obviously understands this, and his friends begin to understand that with him. But in that moment, the Chrono Trigger main theme. If you haven't heard it, I'll probably put it in this episode somewhere, maybe at the beginning. But that starts to play, and it's just really epic, adventure music. Like some crap's about to go down. You're gonna save the world. You just feel really good, and you gotta feel like the characters at that time. You're filled with determination, and it's a beautifully powerful moment. Even running out of that facility, it's like a few screens. It's a few screens you have to go through fighting a few pretty weak enemies. Actually, those robots with the like death lasers, they're pretty scary. But they have like the three legs and they're walking around, creepy.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Scary death laser tripod robot things. I know exactly what you're talking
Oh
about.
yeah, you got me. They have one eye, creepy. And and so you have to run out of there. But that theme plays the entire time. So you just like through that entire like, and even when you go into battle, it's playing, so it doesn't
Yeah.
change into the battle song. So the whole time you're just like, yes, let's go save the world, really determined. But then that's contrasted when you go outside of the dome that has that computer in it, and it's playing the music, the dark and dreary, sad music of 2300
Dude,
AD,
I didn't think about that, but you're
and then
so right. That contrast
the
is
reality,
crazy.
like the reality, like you get really excited when you want to do something really cool and save the world, but the reality's got to hit them right there and be like, holy crap, this is a huge task.
Yes, I mean, look what Lavos did.
hmm
Oh
If you
my
can
gosh, I
destroy
didn't
the
even think about it that
if you
way.
can destroy the whole world, how can us three people? At that point, it's just three people. How can three people save it? So that's like, actually, I don't know. At that point, do you have Robo?
I'm gonna say maybe.
Hard maybe on that one. I'm not sure if you have Robo yet, but it
Experts on the
just.
game giving you the knowledge.
I, well, it's you get Robo like right around there. I can't remember if Luca
Yeah,
fit because I was thinking like, never mind, doesn't matter.
we
But
digress.
we digress because I was thinking, wait, does Robo activate the computer? But no, I'm pretty sure it's Luca if she's
Yeah.
there. But yeah, so there's that contrast, and it's, I don't know, it affects the player too. Really excited, then oh, this is gonna be hard and scary.
Yes. And again, it feels so organic too. Nothing in the story feels forced.
Yeah. What's what's another one of your favorite moments?
Oh man, I don't know. There's a lot. I think the character Glenn is one of my favorite non-main RPG characters. He's so cool, and I love that like old timey knight mentality where he's like, no, I've made these oaths and I gotta fulfill these oaths and things. But also he
Very
was a failure.
chivalrous.
Yes, great word by you.
Thank
But
you.
he was also you bet. So he's a failure. He failed, and his master, what is it, Cyprus?
Yeah.
He gets killed, right? And Glenn gets turned into a frog. And so the Genius Dream Team came up with the best name ever for him and called him Frog. Pause for effect.
There it is.
But but anyway, so he's a failure. And anytime something happened with Frog, it just felt so good because he's being redeemed. His is the redemption story. And the redemption story is so cool with him, and he eventually becomes this hero that didn't fail, but not only saves his own time, but saves the entire planet and saves all of time. And that's so cool to me. So anytime anything happens with Frog or with Glenn, I love that. I love that storyline. I love that plot line.
Super cool thing. So Magus is the reason Glenn, the dude, turned into a frog dude, right? And you can
Yep.
choose whether or not to recruit Magus. You can actually kill him with Frog if you want. It's not like a super easy battle. It's one on one, but Frog can heal himself and stuff. But in the end, so the endings change if you recruit Magus or not, and Frog turns back into human Glenn
What if
if
you
you
don't recruit me?
if you kill Magus or
I didn't
Magus.
know that. That
Yeah,
is so cool.
boom, mind blowing. It's so cool. I mean, it doesn't change the ending at all, story wise or anything, except for the fact that he is not a frog and he is a dude now.
So that's really cool.
So
Oh,
like
that's so
little
cool.
touches
And
like
that
that,
and
super cool.
and that adds to something ties into Chrono Cross. There's a character named Glenn in Chrono Cross that is a human that looks a lot like the Glenn from Chrono Trigger.
Is there? Okay, I've played that. I do not remember. I'm gonna look that up real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah, he's man, you're on the boat and you go for the first time into that city right by the water, and there's a character named Glenn who has this sword and his family's like fire set. It's when
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah.
yeah. So that's really cool that might be a hint at what the canon ending for Chrono Trigger is, because there's this guy named Glenn and he's a normal person in Chrono Cross.
And Glenn and Surge can perform the X Strike.
Get out.
Get out. Frog and Chrono can perform the X Strike. Glenn and Chrono Cross, Frog confirmed. It's the same person.
There you go. You heard it here first, people. We broke it here.
Probably didn't hear it here first, but
It's probably all
it's
over
probably
Wikipedia and stuff.
yeah. But
But
still
hey,
cool.
it's a good feeling when you discover something on your own like that. There you go.
Yeah, it may not even be the same person actually, but that is a cool reference.
No. It is. It is.
Chrono Cross was full of those like weird little references. Like all the tablets are because of the Mammon machine from Chrono Trigger.
Are you
Apparently.
serious?
Yeah. So like all those tablets and everything, like all that power and whatever, like the fire tablets and all those. Chrono Cross is a weird game. How you use powers and stuff, man.
Yes, it
I
is.
am not down for that.
Don't get me
Anyways,
started.
but those are all like because of the Mammon machine breaking and stuff happening. So the Mammon machine is this weird, like I don't even know how to explain it honestly.
Okay, I got this. So it uses, because I don't know if you know this, but I also went to MIT for fantasy video games.
MIT for what?
Whatever. Don't ignore. You can edit that out. Okay, so
No, wait, no, no, no,
there's
I'm curious. No,
a
no, no. Tell me, what is MIT for fantasy and video games?
oh, because I was gonna say like because it's an engineering thing because it's a machine. So MIT is the big like engineering school in America. So I was
Ah,
like, okay.
ah, I
And I
get it.
said I went to MIT. I was like, that doesn't work because this is like a fantasy story and stuff. So that's not gonna work out. So it has to be the MIT for fantasy video games. So, uh, so it has to be the MIT of fantasy video games for it to work. That was terrible. I know it. Anyway, so the Mammon machine, what it did is it used the power of Lavos to fuel all of Zeal's technology and things like that. So
Because, okay. So, I mean, Lavos appears in like
yeah, yeah.
prehistoric times, right? That's like the purpose of you going to
So
prehistoric
yeah,
times.
so
Okay,
that's
continue.
why. So they're using the machine to that, and that's an interesting story element I could spend a while talking on too. Like, yes, it's this terrible thing. They're sucking up the power of the Earth, and Lavos is doing that. And instead of trying to stop that, they're just kind of piggybacking off the power of Lavos. So that's what the Mammon machine is all about.
Man, we
Yes,
need to
sir.
save them trees. Yeah, so the Mammoth Machine. So yeah. Anyways, so Chrono Cross does have a tie-in. Pretty deep act. It's really deep, but man, is
Yes.
it like hidden. If you haven't like played if you haven't played Chrono Trigger like 4 or 5 times, you're not
Yeah.
gonna get it at all. Uh,
So something I want to talk about real quick, and I see it in our notes here, just the idea of the equipment. Like when I find a new sword or something, I get excited.
okay.
When I get a new piece of armor, it makes a difference. I feel like in a lot of games, like you get something new, you get something nice, and it sounds cool, but then you look at it and you're like, that didn't change anything. Like it didn't help me much at all. I don't see a very big difference. But then in this game, like you get a new sword from a treasure chest or something as you're running around, and you're like, yes, this is awesome, and it looks cool, and it actually makes a difference. And I really appreciate about this game. And the accessories are the same way. Like the accessories have cool, effects where like you're stronger or you're faster or you can counter, and I love being able to counter.
Nothing's better than the Rage Band, man. 50% chance of counterattacking on taking damage makes Chrono an absolute monster.
So, talking about the Rage Band, there's another one that you get later in the game that increases the counterattack chance. And that feels so cool to me. And I really love that.
Hmm.
The accessories in the game, the equipment in the game are awesome.
Yeah, there's even like really cool ones that make it so critical chances are more
And it has to be paired with a
often.
certain weapon and
Things
stuff
that
like that.
Okay, so I started my New Game Plus, and in New Game Plus, you get all the items, right? You have all the items
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
had from your previous playthrough, and it blew my mind. I forgot about this. One of the accessories is actually Shala's amulet. So Shala is the person that Shala is this girl in 12,000 BC that is able to use the Mammon, like make the Mammon machine work essentially. So so she's like tapped into Lavos to make
So it's all her
the
fault.
Mammon machine work, right? Technically it's her fault, but she's being forced to do it. So let's not get there. But you actually like get her amulet as like a story item, I think, and then it becomes something you can actually wear, and it prevents all status ailments, which is like just really cool to me. I don't know.
Yeah, the equipment in this game
Equipment's
is done
cool,
really well. It's really cool.
and I agree. Nothing is better in a JRPG than when you put on armor on your character, or you put a different weapon on your character, and
Yes.
you can see it. So like I'm like right now I'm using the swallow, which is a katana for Chrono, and it's
It's
blue.
so
It's
cool. And
freaking
like the,
blue.
the trail.
He cuts people up with blue. He's like blue, 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 and they're dead. And like the rainbow sword, that's another one. Like,
Yes,
you know,
sir.
get the rainbow sword, right? Has a rainbow streak behind it when you
So
slash
not
people.
only does the weapon look
Just
different, but the
cool.
the trail behind it will look different. And when I was playing, I thought this was cool, especially for a game in 1995, when like characters shoot a crossbow or Luca shoots her little gun, um, they'll actually miss. Like you can actually see the bullet missing the enemy and like flying off the screen. And when you're cutting with the sword, it'll
Yeah.
actually miss the character. Like it won't make contact with not the character, but the enemy. And that's so cool that they'll do that in a game like this.
Hmm. All right, so this has just been like one
Yeah,
giant
this is our
love
love letter to
fest
Chrono Trigger.
for this is our love letter to Chrono Trigger, but in every relationship there are some negatives. Is there anything from Chrono Trigger you
There's one
don't
thing,
like?
like the tech system is really cool, and I wish more games had something like a tech system, especially like dual and triple techs where you can like team up with other characters to do this attack. And I feel like,
So quick
yeah,
quick explanation. Tech system. In battle, you get tech points. Through tech points, your characters learn skills, and you can combine those skills, or they're called techs, to do like super
Yeah,
attacks.
and
Continue.
sometimes they have like effects where you'll heal the whole group instead of just healing one character, or you'll attack all the enemies instead of one or whatever. But I feel like later in the game, the techs and the importance of the dual and the triple techs kind of fades away, where you have these powerful single techs that all your characters can do, and most of the time I feel like it's more worth it to do those single techs than it is to not waste, but spend two characters' turns to do a dual tech or a triple tech. And there's even like an accessory you get where you get this supposed to get this cool triple tech, like it invokes whatever triple tech that you can then do, but the triple tech doesn't seem like it's worth it.
So I'll fight you on this one. So I was thinking about the same thing too as I was playing through again. But what it does is it'll so say you have the Nagas or whatever, the dragon
Yeah,
lady,
yeah,
like dragon snake lady things.
yeah.
They're weak to fire, right? So Chrono has the cyclone, which can attack a bunch of people in one area. Luca has fire attack. You can combine those to do the fire whirl, which will then attack multiple of these Naga dragon people with a fire attack.
But
So
but but again, that's
and
early
the
in the
same thing
game
goes.
though. Can you think of any examples like later in the game where that take where
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do. So I do. So Ayla and Chrono have a dual tech. I feel like it's called like the Falcon Dive or
oh, where she
something like
throws them up
that,
in the
where
air?
Yeah, Ayla picks up Chrono, throws him, and he moves in a trajectory that can attack in like a horizontal line instead of like just one character, which is actually extremely useful for a fight against one of Lavas's final forms. So
Oh,
there's stuff like that. So maybe the damage output is the same as with two characters, but the area of effect has changed, and also you can add status effects and status ailments and whatever to your attacks. And then there's the obvious ones of like heals everybody on your team rather than just one
yeah,
person.
those are a must. You gotta have some of those. Okay, so I relinquish. You win that argument.
So sorry, not that I wanted to fight you on that one, but yeah. And we have talked about that as with most old games, some of the objectives can be unclear at times if you're not paying like super good attention. But I think one thing that does bother me from Chrono Trigger is not really like with the game itself, but just one of the time periods I don't like, and that is prehistoric time.
Really? Why not?
I hate prehistoric. I don't know. I don't like the story arc there. I don't like Ayla is like I honestly usually put Ayla on my team because she's buff, she's
Hmm.
ripped, she does tons of damage. But other than that, that whole story to me is like lame. I mean, like Chrono and friends get drunk, and they lose all their stuff because of little dinosaur people, and then you go fight dinosaur people. And like really, the only purpose for being there is like you get Ayla, crazy caveman lady, cave lady, and and you get to see the exact time when Lavos like crashed into Earth as a meteor.
Yeah,
So like that's the only purpose for that time, and then I just find it aesthetically it's not very appealing to me. The music is just that's I feel musically is the weakest time in the game, aside from being in like the Dragon Fortress keep thing. The music's pretty cool
yeah.
there.
Well, and I think
Yeah,
the story element that is important there is I think it kind of introduces the beginning of the tension between the humans and the monsters, and that's kind of a running tension throughout the entire game where you have these human characters and you have monsters and they have this feud going on between them, and I think that's the beginning of it. But I don't know, it's not my favorite part of the game either. I feel like the story bogs down a little bit in there. It feels a little long for what you accomplish,
yeah,
so I can kind of
exactly.
see where you're coming from on that one.
Yeah. Other than that, I cannot think of any complaints with this game. So closing thoughts on Chrono Trigger. Play just number one, play the game.
Yeah, if you
It
haven't
is
played it,
so
if you haven't
good.
played it already, if you like RPGs, especially the JRPG style, this is a classic. This one is one that you need to play.
Even if you're iffy on JRPGs, you're not sure if you like them a lot,
Good.
this is a great
Yeah, I
starter.
agree totally.
And like a lot of these JRPGs nowadays, like Persona 5 or Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Xenoblade Chronicles 1, it's like you're not going to have to invest 200 hours to beat
Right.
this game. Honestly, like it's interesting. This game feels really long, but honestly, you only really log in about 20 hours if you play at like a normal pace without a ton of grinding or anything before you get to the final
Yeah.
boss. And that's part of the reason it's so good. It never slows down. It's always really fast moving, no fluff. It's just a really, really good game. Please play it. You will love it.
I agree 100%.
10, 10 out of 10 from Adam
10
Henderson.
tenders.
10 tens from the tenders. All right. Well, oh, go ahead. You have any
Well,
thoughts?
I had a thought, but then I lost it, so I feel really bad.
Sorry, I stomped out your thought. Anyways, thanks for listening, guys, and thank you so much, David, for appearing on Tender's Talk.
Absolutely, Adam. Have me on anytime, man. It's been fun.
Definitely, definitely. Remember, guys, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.